Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm gonna start reading the book of 1 Samuel, but before I get started, I would like to say that I have been going through like a depressed situation. So the thing for me is I'm the type of person that I could get overwhelmed by the bad things other people go through. And I had a friend that was going through depression herself, suicidal depression. And although I wasn't feeling that way, it still affected me because I'm the type of person that when someone else is hurting, especially when they're close to me, that I feel hurt. So that went on for over a month, although my last video was last week, and that's just because they was like all pre-recorded. So although it looks like I only missed a week of the Bible review, I was really depressed for over a month and I didn't do anything. So it's interesting that 1 Samuel will be the next book that I will be talking about because it talks about depression a little bit, and I'm about to get into it right now. 1 Samuel starts off with a woman named Hannah. Hannah is her husband's second wife. Hannah is unable to conceive children. So since she cannot have children, the first wife torments her and teases her. And it makes Hannah sad and depressed because she feels less than a woman because she cannot give her husband a child. Hannah goes to the sanctuary and Eli is on duty when she goes. Hannah is very unhappy, and as she prays, she starts to cry. She starts to mumble prayers to herself. No words are coming out of her mouth, but she's just, praying. To Eli, the priest, it looked like she was drunk. He didn't recognize that type of praying. And that goes to tell you how much pain she was in, that the priest didn't even recognize what was going on. He thought she was drunk. So Eli approaches Hannah and tells her that she has to leave because she cannot be drunk in the sanctuary. Hannah tells Eli that she isn't drunk. In fact, she hasn't had nothing to drink at all. And then she continues to tell him that she's just very unhappy and she's in pain because she cannot bear children. And she wants to bear children really badly. So she tells him that she's there praying to God to give her a child of her own. So in Hannah's prayer, what she told the God of Israel was, she made a promise that if God was to give her a child, that she would give that child a life of discipline to God, meaning that she would give the child up to possibly live in a sanctuary so he could be raised knowing God and he could be disciplined in the word of God. Eli tells Hannah to go in peace. And before Hannah leaves, she tells him that don't think of her as a bad woman. And she asks Eli to keep her in his prayers. So before the year was out, Hannah gave birth to a son and she named him Samuel. Hannah told her husband that when Samuel no longer needs his mother's milk and he's able to care for himself without a mother, that she would dedicate him to God and she would take him to the sanctuary herself. And that's exactly what Hannah did. Hannah tells Eli, remember me, I'm the woman that was praying. God gave me a son, and now I'm dedicating my son to the sanctuary. Samuel went to live amongst Eli and his sons and his family. Eli's sons were nothing but trouble. Eli's sons didn't know God and they couldn't care less about the customs of being a priest. It was customary for the offerings, for the meats of the offerings to be boiled, and after it was boiled, the priest was supposed to stick a fork in it and then take their share from that. But because Eli's sons said that they didn't like their meat boiled, they rather it roasted, they took a piece of the meat before it was offered and they roasted it and they ate it then. Eli Eli was getting older, and he kept on getting reports from the people that his sons was ripping the people off, and they were sleeping with the woman who helped out in the sanctuary. Eli asked his sons what they were doing, and then he tells them that what they were doing is wrong. Eli warns his sons that if you sin against people, there's God's help. But if you sin against God, who's to help? There's no help. Eli's sons was too far gone in disobedience, and they didn't listen to a word of what their father told them. The God of Israel was fed up with Eli's sons. If the God of Israel didn't come to you directly and speak to you, or send an angel to speak to you, he would speak to you through a prophet. So this holy man has a message from Eli through God. Back in this time, they called priests holy men. So a priest, a holy man came to Eli with God's message. And what God's message to Eli is, I have revealed myself to your ancestors when they were in Egypt. Out of all the tribes in Israel, I chose your family to be priests. So why do you not take priesthood seriously? Why do you treat your sons better than me? God said that his family would no longer be his priests indefinitely. I honor those who honor me. Those who scorn me, I demean. I will wipe out your family and your future family, and I will establish myself a true priest. God came to Samuel one night while he was asleep. This was the time where the revelation of God was really heard or seen. Samuel hears his name being called, so he gets out of bed and he goes to Eli. When he goes to Eli's bed, Eli tells him that he did not call him. So he tells Samuel to go back to bed. The God of Israel calls Samuel again. Samuel does the same thing. He gets out of bed. He goes to Eli and he asks him, what does he want? You called my name, what do you want? Eli tells him the same thing. I did not call your name, go back to bed. This happens about 4 times. So the last time the God of Israel calls Samuel, he gets out of bed and he goes to Eli's bed again, and he says, Eli, you are calling me. What is it that you want? Eli then realizes that it is God who is calling him. So Eli tells Samuel, if the voice calls again, say, speak, God, I am your servant. I am ready to listen. Samuel returns to his bed and God speaks to him again, and Samuel says what Eli tells him to. God tells Samuel to get ready for something in Israel that would shake everyone up and get their attention. The time has come for me to take Eli's family down, and everything that the holy man has told Eli will manifest. Eli knew what his sons were doing and he did nothing. I will bring judgment on his family. The evil of Eli's family cannot be wiped away by sacrifice or offering. The next day, Eli asked Samuel, what did God tell him? And at first, Samuel was hesitant to tell Eli what God had told him, but then he told him everything. He didn't hold back a word. Eli accepted God's message and he said, he is God, let him do whatever he wants, whatever he thinks is best. Samuel grew up and God was with him. He was a true prophet, and everyone who knew Samuel knew that he was the real thing. Israel went to war with the Philistines and was badly beaten. About 4,000 Israel soldiers died. The Israel elders asked, why has God given them such a bad beating today? Israel says that as if they're special to everyone else in the world. And I know that that's the theme of the Bible, that they're God's chosen people. But there are other people in the world still. There's a lot of other people besides the people of Israel at this time. So they have to also think, why would there be a reason to be sent to war if you're never going to lose? if you're going to beat everybody, why would you need war? Why would the God of Israel put you through war? They have to realize that sometimes they're going to lose. But I get that every time they do lose, they see it as a punishment. So it's like, why didn't the God of Israel just kill everyone else in the world from the start and just leave the Israelites? So because that they was beaten so badly, the elders of Israel said, let's get the chest of God. The chest of God will accompany us and it will save us from the grips of our enemies. Eli's 2 sons accompanied the chest of the covenant of God, because Eli's 2 sons are also priests, and only the priests had the duty to carry the chest of God. The Philistines was worried because they heard that the chest of God was being brought, and they heard of the stories of what happened to the Egyptians when the chest of God was present in the war. But this time, the chest of God didn't protect them because the Philistines beat them even worse than before, and the Israelites took off running for their lives. And if that wasn't bad enough, the chest of God was taken and Eli's 2 sons were killed. Eli was 98 at this time. He was very old and he was blind. When he heard the news that the chest of God was taken and that his 2 sons were killed, he ripped off his clothes and he fell to the floor. But Eli was also very fat, so when he fell to the floor, he broke his neck and he died. Eli led Israel for 40 years before he died. Trouble followed the Philistines wherever they went as long as they had the chest of God. The people had plagues and the people suffered gold tumors and rats were poisoning them. The Philistines decided to give the chest of God back to the Israelites, but they wanted to pay compensation because they wanted to be healed. So they gave the people of Israel 5 gold tumors and 5 gold rats to match the number of Philistine leaders. When the chest of God was brought back, some men out of curiosity tried to sneak a peek inside the chest of God. And when they tried to open it, God struck them and 70 men died. 20 years passed, and throughout Israel was a fearful movement towards God. Samuel told the people that if they was truly serious about coming back to God, that they would have to clean house by getting rid of foreign gods and fertility goddesses and grounding themselves firmly in God worship. God and God alone will save you from the Philistine oppression. After Samuel told the people that, the people did what Samuel told them. They got rid of everything. They cleaned house. The Philistines came back again to go to war with Israel, but this time a huge thunderclap came from the sky and exploded among the Philistines, and it frightened them. It sent the Philistines into a panic and mass confusion, and they scattered before Israel. When Samuel got older, he appointed his sons to be judge over Israel, but his sons did not follow his footsteps. They were evil. They was only in it for themselves, taking what they could get from it, taking bribes and corrupting justice. So it's like a pattern. It's like it skips a generation. First you get good people and then you get evil people. So if your father was a good person, the children is going to be evil, and then their child is going to be a good child. That seems to be the problem, like with Eli and his sons was like that. And now Samuel's sons is the same way Eli's sons were. So that's something I noticed also that's happening in the Bible a lot. The elders were fed up with Samuel's son, and they confronted Samuel and told Samuel that his sons did not follow in his footsteps. The elders told Samuel, here's what we want you to do. They said, appoint us a king to rule over us like everyone else, like the other nations. Samuel was crushed, so he prayed to God. God told Samuel to give the people what they asked for. God told Samuel that they're not rejecting you as king, they rejected me as king. From the day I brought them out of Egypt until this very day, they've behaved like this. They left me for other gods. God continues to warn Samuel, and he tells Samuel about the type of king that the people are asking for. God tells Samuel that the people are asking for a king that would turn their sons into soldiers. The king will put forced labor on the farms. The king will put your daughters to work as beauticians, waitresses, and cooks. The king will tax your property, and you'll end up no better than slaves. I'm speaking only about the United States of America because that's where I'm from, so I don't know how they do it everywhere else. But if you think about it, that's exactly how this country is run. It's exactly the same thing. Men go to war, men and women go to war, and women are put to work, and people are taxed for stuff that they own. They have to pay for the stuff that they own. So it's still like a slavery type situation still. So Samuel warns the people that the day will come where you will cry in desperation because of the king you wanted so much, but don't expect God to answer. So now we talk about Saul. Saul's father sends Saul to go look for his lost donkeys. Saul takes a servant with him. Him and the servant looks for the donkeys for days, but they didn't find any. Saul was about to give up on searching for the donkeys and return home, but his servant said, "There's a holy man in this town." The servant tells Saul that we could go to this holy man and ask him for help. So Saul agrees to meet with the holy man. God confirms to Samuel that by this time tomorrow I will send you a man from the land of Benjamin, and I want you to anoint him prince over my people of Israel. God says that this man will free his people from the oppression. And he says, "I heard your cries for help." Even though Samuel has warned the people that God won't answer them, it's sort of like God is setting them up now more than answering them, because he sends someone that would help them. But I think that this is all part of the setup, and as I go on more, you will understand why. So this right here is God's plan from the beginning. God already sees the ending, so he knows what's going to happen. So the setup starts now. The holy man that the servant tells Saul about is actually Samuel. So Saul meets up with Samuel, and Saul tells Samuel about the lost donkeys. And Samuel tells Saul not to worry because his donkeys are found and Israel's future is in his hands. So Saul's a little confused because Saul says that his tribe is the smallest of all Israel, and he's from the most insignificant clan from his tribe at that. So remember, Saul was from the land of Benjamin, and if you remember from Judges, and if you don't remember, you could go back to that video I made on the book of Judges. At the end of that book, a woman was gang raped. Everyone else in Israel went to war with the tribe of Benjamin, and only about 400 or 200 men, people were left, men were left out of the tribe of Benjamin. So that's why he's saying that his tribe is the smallest, because that incident that happened in Judges with the gang rape. So after they spoke, Samuel invites Saul and his servant to the dining hall, and then the next day he prepares to send Saul and his servant off. Samuel takes a flask of oil and he pours it on Saul's head, and he kisses him. And he asks Saul, does he know what this means? Samuel tells Saul that God has appointed you prince over his people. Samuel tells Saul that there will be 3 signs that will confirm God's anointing. First, he says you will meet men near your hometown in Benjamin, and the men will tell you that the donkeys have been found. And then you will be met by 3 men at the oak of Timbar, giving worship to God at Bethel. They'll say hello, and they will offer you 2 loaves of bread, which you would accept. Then you'll run into priests playing harps, trombones, flutes, and drums, and they'll be prophesying. And then Samuel tells Saul Before you know it, the Spirit of God will be on you and you'll be prophesizing too. And you will be transformed. You will be a new person. All the signs that Samuel told Saul would happen were confirmed. And the people that knew Saul before were surprised. Samuel got all the people together and told them that Saul was the king that they asked for. Saul was crowned king when he defeated the king of Ammonites. The king of Ammonites was brutal to 2 tribes of Israel. He gouged out their right eyes and he enslaved them. When Saul went home, the people that knew him doubted that he was fit to be a king. I don't think that Saul was fit to be king neither. I think God set him up in a way. I think God knew that he wasn't fit to be a king, but something needed to be played out because God already saw what was going to happen. So I don't know why God chose Saul, what Saul did, or did he just know Saul's heart and he knew that Saul wasn't a good guy in the first place. So he chose Saul because it's sort of like a punishment to the people of Israel because they rejected God as their king. And if you notice, God didn't make Saul king. He anointed Saul prince of the people of Israel. The people of Israel crowned Saul king. I believe God was still saying that he's the king of the people of Israel and no one could take his spot. So when he said that he was going to give the people of Israel what they asked for, that wasn't entirely the truth. God had no intentions of stepping down from being the king and being the God of the people of Israel. So my suspicions about God's intentions are confirmed because, Samuel warns the people that if you fear God and worship God and obey God and don't rebel against what he tells you, both you and your king, he will save. But if you do the opposite, you would die, king or no king. So what God is saying, don't get it twisted. God is still letting the people know that just because Saul is here, you still have to obey me. Samuel continues to warn the people not to turn their back on God and do not worship ghost gods because they cannot help you. So what a ghost god is, someone that's dead, an ancestor that's dead, and the people pray to the ancestors and the people chose this person as their God that they'll follow. Because back in this time, just like in this time too, they have there's mediums and there's people that could communicate with the dead, so they could bring up dead people from the dead and they could communicate with them when they need them. So Samuel tells them, warns the people that do not communicate with these ghosts. But my thing is, do you have to be a god? Do you have to be dead to be a god? And if those are ghost gods, the people that haven't died yet are live gods, all right? So people are gods themselves. Saul has a son named Jonathan, and Jonathan attacks and kills the Philistine governor. Saul waited 7 days to get orders from Samuel on what to do next. After waiting those 7 days, Samuel never showed up. So Saul decided to take matters into his own hands, and he gave a burnt offering. When Samuel finally came, he was upset and he asked Saul what he has done. And he told Saul that if he would have kept his appointment with God, if he would have waited for the orders, then God would have hand him over the kingdom. So like I said, God still hasn't really confirmed Saul as king. The people just did. This would have confirmed Saul's rule over Israel as king if he would have followed the orders. Like I said, God already knows what's going to happen before it happens. So God knew that Saul wasn't going to follow the orders. God already knew that Saul couldn't wait. So this was meant to happen anyway. God had no intentions of making or confirming that Saul was the king over the people of Israel. So Samuel tells Saul that your kingly rule is falling to pieces, and God is already looking for your replacement. How's God already looking for his replacement? God already knew that he was going to be replaced. God didn't really want Saul there in the first place. He just placed him there because that's what the people asked for. Saul then does another foolish thing. He addresses his army and he tells them that anyone who eats will be cursed, because he didn't want nobody to eat anything before he got his vengeance against his enemies. So that whole day, none of his men, none of his soldiers ate anything. But his son Jonathan did not hear the oath that Saul gave to the soldiers. And he took his staff, stuck it in honey, and he ate it. Jonathan became refreshed after he ate the honey. But the soldiers were very exhausted after fighting the whole day, and they grabbed anything in sight, anything they could find. They any meat they found, any like livestock they found, they just ate it on the spot with the blood still in it. And we know from the other books, that's a sin. You cannot eat meat with the blood still in it. So Saul asked the men, what had they done? He ordered the men to give him the meat, give him the livestock, and he would butcher it properly. So Saul made an altar to butcher the meat properly. After Saul's men ate and it was full and everything, Saul asked God, what should he do about the Philistines? Should he go after them and kill them all? But God doesn't answer Saul. Saul doesn't understand why God isn't answering him. And he asks his troop, who sinned, who cursed us, who cursed the army. What Saul does is sets up a test with 2 stones. And at the end result of this test, whichever stone points to the guy, that was the one who sinned. So Saul put himself on one side, he put his son Jonathan on the other side, and he put the soldiers in the middle. And the stone landed on Jonathan, and then Jonathan, Saul's son, confessed that he did sin because he did stick his staff in honey and he ate it. And he tells his father that, he didn't hear the oath, and he also says that the rest of the men should have ate because they wouldn't be so exhausted. And if they wasn't so exhausted, they would have never ate meat with the blood in it. Before doing the test, Saul said that he was going to kill anyone who disobeyed the oath, even if it was his son. But when it was revealed that it was in fact his son Jonathan, the soldiers told him that, it was silly and Jonathan shouldn't die. He shouldn't kill his son over it. God has a message for Samuel to give to Saul. Samuel tells Saul God's message to destroy Amalek for ambushing Israel when they came out of Egypt. But my thing is, why now? Like, why was the grudge hold, and why wasn't they ambushed before? What's the reason now? And I have to say that this is just all a plan, because they asked for a king, and this is just all like a punishment. It's like a punishment to the people of Israel at this point. God's orders for Saul is total destruction over the Amalek people. Kill their men, women, children, infants, cattle, sheep, donkey, ox, whatever. Just total destruction. Leave no one alive. That's God's message for Saul, given from the prophet Samuel. God tells Samuel that he's sorry for ever making Saul king, because Saul turned his back on him and he refuses to do anything he tells him. But why does God tell Samuel that? Like, he's sorry he made him king. Is he like sorry? Like, is he saying he wish he would have not have gave the people what they want? And is he saying that he wish he never even started this punishment on the people of Israel by giving them Saul? Because he knew Saul would disobey him, and he knew Saul wasn't fit for king. in the first place. After the attack on Amulek, Saul set up a victory momentum for himself. Samuel tells Saul, do you think God only wants sacrifices and empty rituals for show? He tells him God wants him to listen to him, plain listen. He tells Saul listening is the thing, not a big religious production. God doesn't need a show, is what he tells Saul. The reason why Samuel tells Saul this is because Saul did not follow the orders exactly as God said. He did two things that he wasn't supposed to. God told Saul that he was to destroy everything and leave nothing alive. Saul kept choice animals, choice cattle that he didn't kill, and also Saul was to destroy everyone, the people. Saul kept the Amulek king alive for whatever reason, I don't know, but he kept the king alive. So that's why Saul was telling him that God doesn't want to show a religious production. He wants you just to listen to him, which you haven't listened to him. So Saul explains to Samuel the reason why he kept the choice meats and he didn't kill all the cattle was because he saved them to give it as a burnt offering to God. So Saul thought he was doing a good thing by offering the choice cattle, I'm guessing the best meats, to God. God didn't like Saul's sacrifice, and Samuel told him so. Samuel also had to kill the king of the Amulek. So Samuel was so mad with Saul not following the orders of God that he cut him off. And from that point on, Samuel never talked to Saul again. That's not something Samuel wanted to do, but Samuel didn't tolerate anyone being disobedient to his God. So God spoke to Samuel and asked Samuel how long was he going to mope over Saul. God told Samuel, you know that I rejected him as being king. I don't think Samuel was moping over the fact that Saul wasn't going to be king. I think that when you're fond of someone, or if you like someone, it's kind of hard to cut people off. It's hard for some people just to cut people off. Because even though Samuel doesn't tolerate anyone disrespecting or being disobedient to God, he probably feels that Saul wasn't trying to be malicious. He knows that Saul only did that because he thought he was actually doing a good thing. So I think that's the reason why Samuel was moping. God of Israel told Samuel that he needs to get over it because, he's not the king anymore. So God rejects Saul as being their king. But the people still see Saul as king after this. The people doesn't reject Saul. God rejects Saul. But Saul is still anointed, so he's still a prince. And also God probably just wants Samuel to master his emotions and know how to control it. Like, listen, you gotta get back to work. You're a priest, you're a prophet. You can't, spend time wasting moping over someone that I rejected. You have to learn to get over that and move on to the next thing. God tells Samuel to fill his flask, and he tells him to fill his flask with anointing oil. He says that he's going to send him to Jesse in Bethlehem. God has spotted the king that he wanted for the people of Israel. So remember when God said that he's already looking for a replacement? Well, he found his replacement, one of Jesse's sons. So God gives Samuel orders to take a heifer, to take a cow, and a female cow, and take this heifer with him and to tell the people of Bethlehem that he came there to lead the people in God worship, and the heifer is for sacrifice. And he says to Samuel to make sure that Jesse is invited to this sacrifice, and he brings his son. So that's what Samuel did. Jesse was at attendance with his sons at the sacrifice. Jesse has 8 sons, and when Samuel first laid eyes on his eldest son, he thought for sure that that was the one that God wanted because of his stature and the way he looked. God tells Samuel not to be so fast. He tells Samuel that he's not impressed by his good looks and his stature. God's already eliminated the first son as being the king he wanted. So Samuel was wrong. That wasn't the one that wasn't the king that God has chosen. So Samuel tells Jesse to bring out his other sons, and he went through like 6 of his sons after that, and he said, none of your sons is the one that's supposed to be king. Are you sure? Are these all the sons you have? So Jesse tells him, yeah, I have another son, like his last son, his 8th son, which is David. He's the youngest out of all Jesse's sons. He says, but that one he's the runt out of the bunch. So Samuel tells Jesse to bring him anyway. God judges people differently from the way humans judge people. Men and women look at the face, and God looks into the heart. So there was something in David that God liked, even though he was small, even though he was a runt. So when Jesse brought David to Samuel, God told Samuel to anoint him with the oil, and that's what Samuel did. He anointed David with the oil. Samuel saw that David was good looking and bright-eyed, meaning that he was enthusiastic, and he had energy, and he was good looking. So after Samuel anointed David with the oil, the Spirit of God entered David, giving him empowerment for the rest of his life. And at that very moment, the Spirit of God left Saul. The Spirit of God left Saul, and it was replaced by a black mood by God. It made Saul's life miserable, and what it is like it was a tormenting to Saul, this black mood, and it made his life miserable. And what a black mood is depression. So God, when the Spirit of God left Saul, Saul became depressed, and God brought this depression on him. Saul's advisors said that they're gonna go look for someone who could play the harp because the music will make Saul feel better. And one of Saul's men spoke up and said he knows someone who's an excellent musician. And he says that person is the son of Jesse, which is David. So Saul sent his men to go get David so David could play the harp for him. When David arrived, Saul liked David, and he made him his right-hand man. This was God's plan from the beginning. There's no coincidence that the best musician that they could find is David. There's no coincidence that David is the one that's gonna play the harp and is gonna help Saul when he's feeling depressed. So music could change someone's mood. I've been telling people that forever, like music can actually change your mood. That's why I'm so careful about the type of music I listen to. So when you guys listen to music, be aware of how the music makes you feel, because music is meant to change your mood. If you're listening to music that makes you feel sad, you shouldn't listen to that music. You know, if you listen to music make you angry, makes you want to fight, you shouldn't listen to that music. Just for people go to the gym, and people who have, for instance, people have gym music, people have road trip music. This is why. People have a lovers playlist. People give their crushes playlists because you want people to be in a certain mood. You want people to feel a certain type of way. That's why it's important that you listen to music that makes you feel happy and it's positive. To add on that, people today use antidepressants to get over stuff, mental health wise. And back then, all was needed was music. So it's like, if all was needed was music back then, why is it changing now? So people don't really need antidepressants, and I'm saying this because I'm a person that was diagnosed with major depression. So when I say this, I'm not a doctor or anything. I'm speaking from my own experience that there's other ways to get out of that mood of depression than taking medications over, pharmaceutical medications. Apparently, even if God gave you depression, music can cure it. I do things when I'm depressed. My decision making is very, I want to go on trips. I want to do a whole bunch of things when I'm depressed. I make rash decisions when I'm depressed too, so that's something else that I would talk about a little bit later when I'm further along with inside the Bible. The Philistines prepared their troops for battle, and Saul joined up with the Israelites at Oak Valley to prepare for the Philistines. When they got to the battle, a giant about 10 feet tall stepped out in front of the Philistines and told Israel, why bother with an army? Get your best fighter to fight me. And if your fighter wins and kills me, the Philistines will become your slaves, and vice versa. If I kill your best fighter, then you will become the Philistine slaves. The Israelites was terrified of the challenge, because it's one thing to go to war with a whole bunch of people fighting with you, but for you to be the only one fighting is another thing. I don't understand why the Israelites didn't just begin the war. I don't understand why they took the giants' challenge so seriously, and they felt like they had to find their best fighter. They didn't have to accept the giant's challenge. The giant was not in a position to make that type of deal. But nevertheless, the Israelites were still frightened. So one day, Jesse tells his son David to bring some food to his 3 older brothers that's in the battle. And that's what David does. He brings the food that his father prepared for his brothers. So when David got camped where his 3 older brothers was, he heard Goliath's challenge. Goliath is the giant. And then David overheard some of the soldiers saying that whoever defeats the giant will be set for life. The king will give that person a huge reward, and the king will also give that man his daughter as a bride if he defeats the giant. When David heard this and he looked at the giant, he felt something in him came over him, and he felt like, and also what came over him was the Spirit of God, because he was anointed. So he felt that he would be the one to defeat the giant. So some men overheard what David said, and they went and told Saul. Saul sent for David, and he got David dressed in armor from the head to toe. Because David was young and he's never fought in battle before, it was hard for David to walk with all the armor, and it was kind of heavy on him. And remind you, he was a small guy, he was a runt. So David told Saul that he didn't want the armor, he's gonna fight without it. So Saul warned David that the giant has been fighting for a really long time. The giant is an experienced fighter, and he's been in battle before David was born. So David says, with the Spirit of God in him, David says, I think I got it. So David takes his shepherd's staff, and he takes his shepherd's bag, and he takes 5 stones and places them in the shepherd's bag, and he walks to the front line. And Goliath steps out, the giant steps out, and says, who are you to think that you're gonna fight me? And David and Goliath had some words, so Goliath told David that he was gonna kill him. Goliath runs towards David, and David runs towards Goliath. While David was running, he takes out his sling, and he slung a stone which hit Goliath in his forehead, and it knocked him face down in the dirt. And that's how Goliath died, with just that one hit to the forehead. David stands over Goliath and takes Goliath's sword from him, and he chops off his head. When the Philistines saw what David did to Goliath, they took off running. They scattered, running for their lives. the Israelites looted the camp and they took everything. David took the head of Goliath to Jerusalem, but he kept the giant's weapons in his own tent. Saul's son Jonathan was very impressed with David after seeing what he'd done to the giant. From that point on, Jonathan was David's #1 advocate and friend. Jonathan, out of his deep love for David, made a covenant with him. Jonathan gave David gifts like weapons and robes just to formalize their covenant. Which is, I wonder if they saying this is just for friendship. This is their covenant, that to be friends they did this. Because a covenant, there's a lot of covenants before God. A marriage is a covenant before God, but I'll talk about that later. Saul puts David in charge of the army's operations. Everyone admired David, and the women of the town made a song. The lyrics to the song are, Saul kills by the thousands, David kills by the 10,000s. The song made Saul jealous, but here we go again from even back with Cain and Abel. This jealousy caused people to kill each other and to act very evil with each other. So jealousy is like, it's a mood also. Like the black mood is depression, and people should not be jealous of other people at all, because they do evil stuff when they're jealous. Saul took the song as a personal insult, or he saw that the people would hand the kingdom over to David, and Saul didn't want that. So from that point on, Saul kept the eye on David. So the next day, an ugly mood was sent by God to afflict Saul. David played the harp for Saul, as he usually does, to calm his mood. Saul had a spear in his hand, and he throws the spear at David, thinking that it would hit him and nail him to the wall. But David ducks, and the spear misses him. Saul tried to hit David twice, and both times David ducked. So now it was clear to Saul that God was with David, and God had left Saul. Saul made David an officer in the army, and David was in battle often. Saul offered his oldest daughter to David as a bride, but all the time Saul was thinking that the Philistines will kill David in battle, and he'll never have to lift a finger. David was embarrassed by Saul's offer. David said that he comes from a family of nobodies, and he isn't fit to be the son-in-law of a king. But the wedding date was set anyway. As the time got closer, Saul gave his eldest daughter to someone else, and David never got to marry his daughter. And that is because Saul never planned to give David his daughter as a wife. Saul thought that David would be killed in battle. That's why he made him the officer of the army, to get rid of him. So Saul finds out that his other daughter, Michelle, Saul has another daughter, Michal, and he finds out that his daughter is in love with David. So Saul thinks, oh, another chance. I will use my daughter as bait to get David out where the Philistines will kill him. So again, Saul tells David that he will be his son-in-law. And again, David tells Saul that he's a nobody, he has no money, he has nothing to offer. Saul tells David that he doesn't expect any money. All he expects from David is that he kills hundreds of Philistines. But Saul doesn't really mean that. Saul expects David to be killed in action. Do you see how jealous haters could pretend to be your friend when in all actuality they're trying to assassinate you? This is exactly what Saul was doing. But David didn't die. He actually killed hundreds of Philistines, and Saul gave David his daughter to be married. And David married Saul's daughter, and he did become his son-in-law. That made Saul fear David more, because he saw that God was really with David, and he saw how much his daughter loved David. Saul's fear for David settled into hate for David. So Saul hated David. So Saul is in fact a hater. Saul orders his son Jonathan and his servants to kill David. But because Jonathan loves David so much, he warns David that his father is trying to kill him. So Jonathan goes to his father Saul and he speaks to him and he asks his father, why are you trying to kill David? You have no reason to kill David. The people love David and David does good things for Israel, so you should keep him alive. Saul agrees with his son Jonathan and he changes his mind, temporarily at least, about killing David. So now everything with David and Saul is back as it was before. Saul's not going to try to kill David. But a war broke out again between Israel and the Philistines, and David beat the Philistines badly. The black mood came over Saul again and took control of him. And while David was playing the harp, Saul took the spear that was in his hand and tried to throw it at David again, but David ducked. David ducked and got away. Saul sent men to David's house to kill him. David's wife helps David to escape through a window, and she took a dummy god and dressed the dummy god up in a wig made of goat's hair, and she put the dummy god in bed. So when the servants came in, all they found was the dummy god. This made Saul very upset because he felt like he was betrayed by his own daughter. David went to Samuel and told Samuel everything that Saul had done to him. Saul sent men after David, but the men that Saul sent after David ran into prophets and they began prophesying. So Saul sent another group of men and the same thing happened. They ran into prophets and they began prophesying. So Saul was fed up and Saul decided to go look for David himself. But when Saul went to go look for David, the same thing happened to him. He ran into prophets and he started prophesying. Saul took off all his clothes. He was naked and he was rambling for a day and a night, just prophesying. Saul was in a trance of prophesying like the men he sent before him. David then goes to Jonathan, Saul's son, for help, but Jonathan tells David not to worry, that he would talk to his father again, and he tells David to hide in the wilderness and he'll let David know if it's safe to come back. Saul found out that Jonathan was helping David and he called Jonathan a son of a slut. And he tells Jonathan that he wrung shame on his mother. He throws a spear and he tries to hit his son Jonathan. And that confirmed to Jonathan that his father Saul was going to try to kill David. So Jonathan goes to the wilderness where he told David to hide. And he gives him the sign that it's not safe to come back. And Saul is going to try to kill him. Jonathan and David kiss and they go their separate ways. Jonathan goes back home and David continues to be on a run. David and Jonathan make a vow of their friendship and they promise to always love each other even when they get old, that their children was gonna look after each other and everything like that. So the friendship that Jonathan and David are displaying is kind of strange in a way, because this is really the first act of true love I have read in the Bible, and it's between two men. Even when they talk about a husband and a wife, they just talk about making babies, or the woman's job is to make babies for the men. They don't really talk about the love that the husband and wife have for each other. Or if you hear about sex, either it's about making babies or a woman getting raped or a man trying to rape another man. But this is the first, in 1 Samuel is the first time I'm reading about love, a real love, and it's a friendship between guys. So as the story goes on, it develops into a love story between Jonathan and David. So David and Jonathan's love is real is different at this time, I would say. And it's almost sort of like them meeting in the woods. It's almost like a romantic love story. The meeting in the woods, the father is against who the son loves. It's the classic love story, I think. And the first Samuel is like it's a love story. So David goes on his way when he separates from Jonathan, and he goes to Nob. And this is the place where he speaks to the priests. And when he meets up with the priest asks David what was he doing there alone. He lies to the priest and tells the priest that the king sends him on a top secret mission. And he can't really talk about what is he doing there. Then he asks the priest if he has any food. And the priest tells David that all he has is holy bread. The priest tells David that the holy bread is his if he haven't slept with a woman recently. David tells the priest that he hasn't touched a woman because he's on a mission. And when he's on a mission, he abstains from sex, him and his men. Nobody has sex. But the thing is, remind you, David is lying. He isn't on a top secret mission by the king. He just doesn't want to inform the priest that he's on a run. So David also wouldn't take holy bread if he had been with a woman, because it's not in David's character to disobey God. So when David says that he hasn't been with a woman, he's telling the truth. But why hasn't David touched a woman recently if he's married? Wouldn't it be custom for the husband to be in bed with his wife or sleep with his wife at night? David had no idea that he was going to be on a run. So why would he abstain from sex? Why haven't he touched his wife? That gets me wondering about the sex life between him and his wife. He says that he hasn't had sex. What David is saying is he hasn't been with his wife in a while. I don't understand why. While David is talking to the priest, one of Saul's officials is present. David asks the priest if the priest had a sword or any type of weapon that he could have. And the priest tells David that the only weapon he has is Goliath's sword. That is not a coincidence that the only sword he has for David is the sword that David took from Goliath after chopping off his head. So this is all like God's plan. David takes Goliath's sword and he leaves. David gets to another town, and in that town he's recognized. And the people ask him, "Aren't you David? Aren't you the one in the song? Saul kills by the thousands, David kills by the 10,000s." When David got recognized, he panicked because he didn't want the people to turn him into Saul. So David pretended to go crazy. He banged his head on the city gate and he started foaming out the mouth. So the king of that city told them to get David out of here because he's crazy. And there's enough crazy people in the city, he didn't want to add more. So David escapes from that city. David got away and escaped to a cave. When David's family heard where he was, they joined him. And not only his family, other people came too. People came who were down on their luck. The misfits came, the losers came. I hate to call them losers, but that's what it says in the Bible. The outcasts basically came when they found out where David was, and they all came to join David along with his family. So now it's about 400 of them, and David becomes their leader. David commissions the king of Moab to give his father and mother asylum because David didn't want his parents on the run with him, because I guess he felt that they was too old to follow him, and he didn't want his parents in danger. So he makes sure that his parents were safe. And that's where his parents stood until it was safe. David was told by a prophet not to go back to the cave. The prophet told him to go to Judah instead, and so David went to Judah. Saul's official, the one that was there when David met with the priests, told Saul about David's whereabouts. Saul ordered his men to kill the priest of God and his family, but his men couldn't kill the priest. They couldn't kill the priest of God. So because his men didn't want to do it, Saul told his official, the one that snitched on David, to kill the priest. Saul's official killed the priest and his family. Saul spread out that massacre into the priest city of Nob. So Saul killed everyone in that city that the priest was from. Women, men, children, babies, goat, ox, you name it. He killed everything. One of the priest's sons was the only one to escape. When the priest's son escaped, he met up with David. And when he told David what had happened, David felt real guilty. He felt like it was his fault why everyone died, why the priest died. And David even said that when he saw Saul's official, he knew Saul's official would have told. But I guess he couldn't kill the official at that time because he told the priest that he was there on a top secret mission. So if he would have killed the official, it would have been obvious that he was on the run and he didn't want to give himself up. So he just took the chance. David heard that the Philistines was attacking and looting the people of Keilah. So David asked God if he should help the people, and God tells David that he should go and help. And he tells David that he would give the Philistines to him in his hand. So he tells David that he would defeat the Philistines. So David decides to go, but David's men asked David, like, how can you go when we're on the run? We have things to do. But David helps the people of Keilah anyway. David defeated the Philistines and he saved the people of Keilah. Saul got word that David was in Keilah, so he sent his men after him. God told David that the men of Keilah would turn him over to Saul. So David left Keilah. So Jonathan comes to visit David and encourages him in God. He tells David that God is with him, that God would help him, and God would give him the strength. He tells David not to be worried, and he tells David that David will be the king of Israel. John and David made a covenant between God, and then Jonathan goes home. But like I said, their love story is sweet, because just imagine what just happened. Your father is after the person that you love, so you sneak away and you go visit him to encourage him not to give up and not to worry. And while you was there, they made a covenant with God, but they don't say what the covenant was about. So I know you can have a covenant of marriage, but I don't know what covenant. It's like they're saying everything but these two are lovers, but everything that their actions show that it's more than a friendship between these two. To run off and see the person you love and just sneak away. So continuing with the story, Saul finds out that David is hiding out in Rock Mountain, but Saul is unable to pursue David because Saul finds out that the Philistines are attacking his country, so he has to go back home. David left Rock Mountain and he goes to hide out in the caves. When Saul came back from dealing with the Philistines, he finds out about David's whereabouts. Saul sets out to find David. Saul comes to a cave and he needs to relieve himself. So Saul goes into the cave, but what Saul didn't know was David and his men were huddled far back in the cave that he was in. So one of David's men told him, here's your chance to kill Saul. David creeps up behind Saul with his sword and he cuts off a piece of his robe. But David thinks to himself that he cannot kill someone that God has anointed. So David decides to let Saul go. Saul gets up and he leaves the cave. David comes out of the cave and he calls out to Saul. He says, my master. Saul turns around and he noticed it was David. So David says to him, God has handed me you in my hands and I decided not to kill you. He said, let this be evidence that your men are not telling the truth. Anyone who tells you that I'm against you is lying. David tells Saul, I had a chance to kill you and I didn't kill you. David asks Saul, why does he want to kill him? Why does he want to kill a person that doesn't have nothing against him? David continues to tell Saul that there's an old proverb that says, evil deeds comes from evil people, so I won't touch you. You know, basically saying that David's telling him that he's not an evil person, so he's not going to touch you, especially because Saul's anointed. Also, a reason why David probably won't kill Saul is because of Jonathan. He does not want to kill Jonathan's father. So that could be another reason why David just didn't kill Saul when he had the chance. But I do believe him when he says that part of the reason is because he's anointed. So Saul tells David that he's right, and he apologized to David, and he says that God put me in your hands and you didn't kill me. He tells David, why when a man meets his enemy, does he let his enemy go down the road with a blessing? Basically, why haven't you killed me when you had the chance? And Saul goes on to say, I know now that without a doubt, you are meant to be the king because of how generous he is and stuff, I guess. Saul changed his mind that day. He decided to go back home. Samuel dies and the whole country comes to his funeral. So David and his men go to this town where a rich man named Nabal lives. Nabal is translation, it means fool. David told Nabal that he's been protecting his village from afar. He's been looking after his cattle and the people in his village to make sure that they won't get attacked by anyone. So in exchange, David was asking Nabal to spare some food for him and his men. But Nabal said, who are you? He didn't know who David was. He said, who are you that I would give my food to you and your men? So Nabal denied David and his men of food and water, and David went away. David was angry. He said that protecting his village was a waste of time. You notice David's character is not to just attack people for no reason. David is actually a good guy. But that made him mad that Nabal would not give him food when he could have attacked him, and he didn't. So David told his men to gear up because they was gonna attack Nabal, and because they couldn't get food, they would have to take it. So Abigail, which is Nabal's wife, is said to be a very beautiful woman and a nice woman. So when she heard that David and his men protected them and they didn't attack them or take advantage of them, she felt that her husband made a mistake. So she started preparing food and she snuck away, and she went to go bring food to David and his men. As she loaded her donkeys and she was going down the road, David was coming towards their village to kill Nabal, but they met each other in the middle. Abigail got off her donkey and started blessing David and telling him that she's sorry for her husband. Her husband is a fool, just like his name says, and she's thankful that they protect the village and they didn't take advantage. So she gave David and his men food and water and fig cakes and just a whole bunch of food. So after Abigail blesses David and gives him and his men food, she goes back home, and her husband Nabal was presiding over a huge banquet, and Nabal was very drunk. So Abigail decided to wait until he sobered up to tell him what she had done. So that she waited until the next day, and the next day came. When Nabal sobered up, she told Nabal what she'd done for David and his men. And right then and there, Nabal had a heart attack and he went into a coma. And 10 days later, God finished him off and he died. When David heard that Nabal died, he thought that Abigail was a blessing and God sent her to not do any harm, so he wouldn't have to kill her husband. And he was thankful for that. He saw that Abigail was special and he already thought she was beautiful. So he sent his men to go get her to make, so Abigail could be David's bride. So the men went and got Abigail, and Abigail didn't hesitate. She got all her stuff and she went right with the men, and she became David's wife. David also married a second wife. Meanwhile, Saul married off his daughter, David's first wife, to another man. Saul learned about David's whereabouts, and again, he got his men to go after David. David knew where Saul and his men were camping, so David waited until it was nighttime when everyone in Saul's camp would be asleep, and David asked his men, which one of you will come with me? And the priest's son, the only one that got away, was the one that accompanied David to Saul's campsite. So David has his chance again to kill Saul. So while everyone was sleeping, David and the priest's son came into the camp, and by Saul's head was Saul's sword and a jug. David thought, I have a chance to kill Saul, but I'm not going to kill Saul because he's anointed. So instead, David takes the sword and the jug that's by David's head, just to let him know how close he was and he could have died. But none of the men woke up because God put the men in a deep sleep, because God was Saul over to David to be killed. So instead, David just goes far enough where he could be heard, but far enough where he could get away if Saul's men decided to attack him. And he starts to wake the men up by talking real loud. So David goes to like a top of a hill. He wakes up Saul and his men, and he tells Saul, like, look, I have your sword and I have your jug, to let him know how close he was and he could have killed him. He says again, you come to kill me, and God put you in my hands, and I decided to give you a chance, and I didn't kill you. So when would you learn that if God sent you to kill me, and if it was meant for you to kill me, I will let you kill me with no problem? And he tells Saul, you're listening to your men, not to God, and because of this, I won't let you kill me. And I'm not going to kill you because you're my master and you're anointed. So basically he's asking Saul to stop chasing him. David asks Saul, why is Saul so obsessed with him? Saul apologizes to David again and tells David that because he let him live for the second time and he didn't kill him, that he would not continue chasing after him anymore. So Saul went home. Saul went home and David went on his way, but David did not believe that was going to be the last time Saul was going to come after him, because he had that black mood on him. Saul went for protection in Philistine country, which is odd that out of all places he would go to the Philistines, because the Philistines, they had this war going on with Israel. So I'm surprised that the Philistines even let David into their country to live. But back then, I'm guessing you could change sides, and that was a common thing. So David lived in the Philistine country for a year and 4 months. And while David was there for the year and 4 months, he was trying to win over their trust. And I guess he had to act like how the Philistines act. So the way David and his men operated for that year and 4 months was, David often raided villages and he killed women and children. And he killed everyone and he left no one behind. David was trying to blend in with the Philistines and do what they did. The Philistines got ready to make war with Israel, and the Philistine king told David that he wanted David to march with him because he trusted David because of the way David operated while he was there for that year and 4 months. Saul prayed to God because he heard the Philistines was coming after him. So he prayed to God, but God didn't answer him. A long time ago, Saul got rid of all the mediums and the mediums, the people that could communicate with the dead. So Saul, because God didn't answer, Saul told his men to find him someone that could connect with ghost gods, and that's what he was looking for, a medium. So his men have found him a woman, and Sal, he had to go in disguise because he didn't want the woman to know that he was the king. So he went in disguise to the woman, and at first the woman was hesitant to kill him because she told him that Sal would kill her because he threatened to kill all the people who communicated with the dead. But Sal told the woman not to worry. So the woman asked Sal who did she want him to bring back, and Sal told her Samuel. So the woman communicated with Samuel, and when Samuel came out from the ground, the woman realized that the man in disguise was Sal, the king. So she got scared and she thought that Sal did that to trick her. So Sal told her not to worry. And Samuel asked Sal, why did you disturb me? And Sal told Samuel that he's in trouble. Sal told Samuel that the Philistines are after him, and God doesn't answer him no more, not through prophets or dreams. So Sal tells Samuel that God deserted him, and Samuel tells Sal God is doing exactly what he said he was going to do. He's ripping the kingdom from under you, and he's giving it to your neighbor. Because you refuse to obey God and you refuse to listen to his judgment on a Amalekite. And he's saying that because remember that God gave Sal orders to kill the king, and Sal disobeyed those orders. So now God is putting judgment on Sal, and he's punishing Sal for it. So that's why God's not answering. Samuel tells Sal that him and his sons would die, and he also tells Sal that he would join him. So I'm thinking, like, if you tell Sal that Sal was going to die and Sal would join you, does that mean that if Sal dies, Sal goes where Samuel goes? So at this time, is there no heaven or hell being spoke of? Because Sal was considered to be a bad guy who disobeyed God and who sins. Samuel is a prophet, so when they die, they will be at the same place. So there's no heaven and hell. There's not a different place that Sal is going to be from Samuel. That's what I get from it. So Samuel continues to tell Sal that God is giving the Philistines Israel's army. So God takes a really long time to get back at people. Like when you think it's all good, or even if you forgot about your sin, God still remembers what you did. He's just waiting for the setup, the right time to punish, the right time to put judgment on you. The Philistine officers, they saw David coming up with the king, and they asked the king, like, what is he doing here? He's a Hebrew, he's an Israelite. And then the king tried to explain to the officers that he trusts him, and the king tells the officers all the stuff that David has been doing. But the officers tells the king that they don't want him to fight with them because they don't trust him. They think that in the middle of the fight that David will switch sides. So David doesn't fight with the Philistines. The king tells him that he's unable to fight with them, which is a good call, because more than likely the way that David is with Sal, I think that David would have wound up switching sides in the middle. And I believe that the only reason why David was raiding all those villages and killing those people for that year and a half that he lived in Philistine country was because he was trying to fit in. So more than likely, I believe that David would have switched sides. So that was a good call on the officer's behalf. So 3 days later, David returns back to his village, and the Amalek people, they raided his village and they burned it down, and they took the women, both old and young. They didn't kill anyone, they just kept everyone as slaves. So David's men were sad, they was crying, and they even planned to stone David to death for what happened, because they were sad about losing their families. So David went to God, and David asked God if he should go after the raiders, and God told him yes, he would put the people in his hands. So David and his men went after the raiders, and halfway through, when they was like in the middle of it, some of the men dropped out because they was fatigued. They haven't ate anything in a while, and they told David that they couldn't go any further. So about I want to say about 200 of them stayed back, and the rest of them went. So it's like about 600 of them altogether. So and about 200 dropped out. So now it's only like 400 of them. So when the rest of the men continued, they ran into the Egyptian man, and the Egyptian man gave them food and fig cakes and raisin muffins and whatever he had, and he gave them water to drink, and that replenished them because David and his men haven't ate in 3 days. So it's like food is only, I guess people don't eat every day. The people back then, they eat every day, and they ate only to refresh themselves when they had something to do. And food is meant to give you energy. But when you see, like today, people eat a lot of it. People consume a lot of food. You know, you see all fast food restaurants and stuff like that. So people don't give themselves a chance to be hungry nowadays. They just keep on eating, keep on eating, keep on eating. And the body has to, you know, rest and has to digest that food. When you get food, back in these days, when you got food, you was really thankful for it because, you know, you probably haven't eaten in 3 days or in longer than that even. David asked the Egyptian man, who is he and where was he from? The Egyptian man says that he's a slave of the raiders, and David says, well, can you tell us where they are? And the Egyptian man says, if you promise not to kill me, I will show you where the raiders are. So David promises, and the Egyptian takes David and his men to where the raiders are. And David and his men fought the raiders. They fought from sunrise till evening the next day, and David rescued everyone. Everything that the raiders took from them, David got back, and David even got back both of his wives. So when they returned on the way back, when David and his men were heading back, they ran back into the men that dropped out. So some of the mean-spirited men that continue to follow David the whole way, to march with David the whole way, they felt like because those men dropped out that they shouldn't get the full share of everything that they got from. They told David that the men should only be allowed to have their wives and their children, and that's it, and they should just go. But David said family don't do that to one another. So David says that the strays get the same share as the people who stayed with him. So from that day on, that was a rule that David made in Israel, that everybody gets the same share. David also shared the plunder with the stuff that they took from the raiders. He shared with everybody. He shared with all the other countries that he went to from time to time, and any other people that helped him, David shared. So David knew how to make people like him. He knew what it took to keep people on his side, and he was very gracious with those who helped him. So all David's men got their equal share, plus they had some left over to give to other people. Because David knows that if he needs someone's help in the future, that they will remember it, which is real smart. And David has leader-like qualities about him, which is a good thing. So it's like you could see what God saw in David, even though he was like the runt. You could see what's inside of him. There's more to David that meets the eye. So again, the Philistines makes war on Israel, and they kill Saul's sons, Jonathan and his brother. Saul knew he was gonna die. He knew he was next. So he tells his weapons bearer to kill him with a sword, but the weapons bearer couldn't do it. So Saul took his own sword and he fell on it and he killed himself. Saul's weapons bearer, he saw what Saul did, and he did the same thing and he killed himself. So Saul, all of his sons and his weapons bearer all died on that day, just like Samuel said would happen. So when the Israelites saw that their army was in full retreat and that Saul and his sons were dead, they left their cities and they ran for their lives. So the Philistines moved into their cities and took over all their sites. So the next day, the Philistines came back to rob the dead, and they saw Saul, his sons. So they chopped off Saul, they cut off Saul's head, and they ripped off his armor. And they celebrated throughout Philistine country, and they paraded through their shrines and their idols and the people. They nailed the corpse of Saul and his sons on the wall. When the people of Jabesh Gilead heard what the Philistines did to Saul and his sons, they jumped into action. They traveled all night and took the corpse of Saul and his sons off the wall and carried them back to Jabesh and burned off their flesh. And they buried their bones under a tree in Jabesh, and they fasted. And they fasted in mourning for 7 days. That's 1 Samuel, and it was really long because I missed a week, so I guess I went into detail, and this is probably going to be like an hour long, I don't know. But yeah, that's the first story of Samuel.